Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy football strategy show every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I'm here as always with Casey, Vlad to the Bone, Scheinvold. That's getting harder and harder to say for some reason. And Ross the Boss.
It's Casey.
It's always easy to say that one, though.
Yeah, it's always good. Hey, everybody. It's week 6, NFL football. I'm excited. Big games coming up this week. Big game tonight, Kansas City at home against Denver, who I think is the worst team in the league. You guys know that Sean Payton is the most paid coach in sports? Do you guys know that?
Is it because he's being paid by two teams at once?
I don't know. I just know he's the highest paid coach at any sport.
I don't know
and
that he's
he looks the most
right
unhappy in any sport, too, when he does those press conferences.
That's right.
I mean, he looks upset, mad,
he's
and
wishing
wants
he
to quit.
stayed in the booth.
Yeah, I mean, that team is tanking.
I think he really is wishing he stayed in the booth for multiple reasons, but one of them is that it's not going to look good on his coaching career.
I mean, they're tanking. I mean, they want Khalid Williams. What do you guys think?
Well, first, let's say hi to Albert Mariquin. Albert, let us know if you have questions,
let's call
comments,
him Caleb Williams.
Yeah, let's call him Caleb. Well, let's call him by his name. That's a good idea.
Let's call him by his name. Good idea, Casey Scheinvold.
You know, are they going to get him?
I don't think they're the worst team right now. I think the Giants are.
All right, listen.
Coming from a Giant fan, too. Ooh, those
Wow.
are fighting words.
Ooh. By the way, Casey, you convinced me to switch over to the Dolphins against the Giants last week. I would have picked the Lions. I would have won either way.
Right.
But it just felt safer. And, of course, the Dolphins are our cover boys today with Tyreek Hill just going bananas. Talking headlines, and then we'll get to Albert Mariquin's question in a second. There were some major injuries this week. Let's just cover that briefly, and then we'll get to Albert. What are the biggest injuries especially from a fantasy sports perspective? What would you say are the biggest ones?
Casey?
Well, obviously, Justin Jefferson was routinely
pretty bad.
Pick number 1 or pick number 2 in almost every fantasy draft that wasn't Superflex. So, I mean, he's just you can't replace him. There's no way to find that much volume in one guy. You built your team around him. So
it's true. The potential good news is he's not necessarily going to be out for that long. We'll see.
Well, 4 weeks at least.
I'm saying there's a 20% chance you don't see him again this year.
All right. You're not
going to see him for 4 weeks, guys. I mean, 4 weeks
definitely
is a
not
long
4 weeks.
time.
Well, he was put on IR. So
if they're 1-6 and Kirk Cousins is traded when he's healthy again, are you really going to throw this guy out there with a hamstring injury, or just say, you know what, buddy, take the year, get it super strong. We'll get a good draft pick and run it back next year.
Let's get back to injuries and headlines in a second. I want to make sure when people ask a question, they get it answered. So Albert Mariquin says, pick 2 full PPR, Adam Thielen, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett. Wow. I feel like they're almost like the same constellation of receivers. In terms of
let's talk matchups. Adam Thielen, who's Carolina play?
They play the Dolphins.
Should be a high-scoring game, right, Case? I would start Adam. He's been tearing it up fantasy-wise.
Let's be honest.
Top 10 receiver right now.
They're always
that's one
chasing from behind.
Yeah.
So the game script is going to support Adam Thielen. And right now he's averaging like 7 or 8 targets a game. So I think he's the obvious number 1 there. Number 2, I would actually go Christian Kirk. Because
Jacksonville plays who?
Jacksonville plays the Colts, who are terrible against the pass. And I think it's going to be a high scoring game because you got remember, that's the first game of the season where Calvin Ridley got the 2 touchdowns because Jacksonville looked like they were off to the races. Tyler Lockett to me gets a little low. I don't trust Geno Smith this year.
I also don't really like it against the Bengals on the road. It just doesn't seem like a great matchup.
Is it going to be raining there? It's raining terribly here on Saturday.
Is it snowing in space? I'm sorry, I had to say it.
I'm a celebrity in an emergency.
I probably would leave Christian Kirk out of the 2. Ross, are you?
No, I disagree. Kirk? I say you start Kirk and you start Thielen.
I say Kirk and Thielen.
I don't like Lockett.
I'm sorry. I meant to say Lockett is the one sitting.
Yeah, Lockett is not the lock. You throw Lockett out.
No. I'm never so comfortable with Lockett anyway. But in that group, it's a tough call. But I would probably sit Lockett also. Okay. Yeah, Chris Atwater says, I think the Patriots are the worst. And this is coming from a Patriots fan.
Yeah, I think it's funny.
Bad.
There's a Boston-New York rivalry all the time. This time it's who's worse. Like we want the bragging rights.
Listen, you can't go to the Patriots, Denver, or the Giants. I guess you can't go wrong with either three teams. But the past 2 weeks, I got to give it to the Patriots. I mean, they've been outscored like 3-75 or something.
They made the Saints look like they were going to win the Super Bowl instantly. That was
embarrassing. And
look who we have here.
Belichick's gonna be fired.
Party Marty.
Party Marty's here.
He's a big Dolphin fan. I forgot.
Yep, he's a big Dolphins fan, big hockey guy.
How do you win a hole?
Well, that's the thing. Interestingly, he says they're going to win the whole thing, but he's missing the W.
It's not Canadian spelled. Canadians aren't that bright.
I'm not making fun of Marty about this, but if you're gonna leave something out of a Super Bowl, don't leave out the W. You must win. All right, now let's get back to headlines. So Justin Jefferson, I agree with you. That is probably the biggest headline because because of the amount of investment people put into him in drafting. But there's been some big losses otherwise. Ross, who else? Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I love this guy beginning of the year. I mean, this guy was getting volume. He was great. James Conner, Arizona Cardinals. I mean, he was getting over 20 handoffs a game and catching the ball and scoring. I mean, that's a huge loss for the Cardinals. And Casey and I had to do some research to find out who the next guy up was.
Well, they listed.
I didn't even heard of him.
Still up for debate.
They listed Keontae Ingram as the starter on their depth chart this week, but that Amari DiMercato is the one who took Connor's place in the last game and did pretty well. So
right. So there's a real and that I had somebody try to trade me DiMercato recently, and it's like I don't know what his value is right now. Meanwhile, I love Ross.
It's like these guys they weren't even on anybody's sheet when draft was starting. Now he's like
he wasn't even on anybody's sheet when the NFL drafted. He was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that happens. In fantasy leagues, you're just going to have to pay attention all year.
He was Kendre Miller's backup in college, for those who need to know.
And then the other big loss was Casey's guy, 2 Chainz, down in Miami, the running back. I mean, he was tearing it up. I mean, he was like a top 5 running back case, and he was awesome.
Achane was going to be that, how there's always one.
I told you he was the next Chris Johnson.
One waiver wire pickup who wins the league for you. Like he was averaging 12 yards a carry.
He was on the way potentially to having like a Chris Johnson-like career. We'll see. It's a big prediction, but he had that look.
He's a rookie. He's not going to.
Problem is,
Chris Johnson was a rookie.
Problem is, it's his second knee injury already this year because he hurt himself in the preseason and missed a bunch of the preseason.
He's very hard to figure out his value, certainly going forward.
He's not a big dude. He's very small. So the physicality of the NFL is going to make it hard for him to be a volume type of
All right.
player.
Now, I just want to honor Marty. He got the spelling right. We're with you, Marty. And listen, are they actual Super Bowl contenders? Let's answer this question.
In the AFC, yes, but the Niners are the best team in football right now.
Okay, but if you can win the AFC, then you're Super Bowl contenders because you get there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just one game.
Yeah.
All right, now, Chris Atwater is saying, are you saying the Saints are not going to win the Super Bowl, Dr. Dan? How dare you? He was very upset by that. And
unlikely, but
they could.
In their defense, the NFC South is not exactly difficult to win this year.
Yeah, but KC did predict the NFC Championship. He said this last show, it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. And Casey predicted that. We'll see if it comes true. I like the prediction.
Looking like a really good prediction.
Yeah, the 49ers are going to win.
I wrote that down, Casey.
The 49ers just look like such a complete team. All right. Other injuries that pop out at you. I think those were the big 3 as far as I'm remembering.
Well, and then Anthony Richardson to the IR is big. Obviously, he was kind of.
Well, not only is that big, but and it looked bad when it happened. He couldn't even lift his arm, so you knew
they're
something
saying he could be out up to 8 weeks.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and a guy playing quarterback that runs the ball like he does, you're not going to last that long in the NFL, guys. That's the truth.
All right, let me ask you a question.
This guy's getting popped by linebackers.
The truth about Anthony Richardson is, while it's bad for Anthony Richardson owners, it's probably better for every other fantasy player on the Colts.
That's an interesting
thought. Yep. That's
because Gardner Minshew makes Michael Pittman better. He's got a great connection with Josh Downs. Jonathan Taylor is coming back to full speed. Zach Moss has been a revelation. So you're totally right.
Yeah.
Minshew makes them better from a fantasy perspective.
I think Minshew is that guy just wants to win. I mean, he'll do anything. He doesn't care.
And it's the revenge narrative. I said this on Tuesday.
Yep.
Going back to Jacksonville, man.
Going back to Jacksonville. Going back to Jacksonville. I don't think
remember, like, he knows this Colts offense probably better than Richardson did because he was the backup in Philadelphia where Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator last year. So this is his second year in Steichen's offensive system.
I mean, he's also one of those rare backups that can slot in and actually be useful. Like,
yeah,
and not just in the NFL, but even as in deeper leagues, you could use Gardner Minshew.
Oh, totally.
Here's a great example. So I have Anthony Richardson. I drafted 3 quarterbacks. I have Anthony Richardson and I have Jordan Love on bye. And this is a super flex league. So now I got Trevor Lawrence and nobody. I mean, so
I'll give you Daniel Jones.
I'll take him
for a ham sandwich at this point.
Let me go to the refrigerator. I need one. I'll certainly do that. Other headlines besides injuries that we need to talk about, because we know fantasy football is a changing landscape every single week. It's one of the things that I love about it. It's also one of the things I hate about it. You can't always rely on stability. One week people are saying, "Oh, this guy is the greatest." Another week there's a dud. And what are you saying about him? So
the big news, guys. I mean, it's rapid fire. It's everybody's talking about it. I can't get away from it. Yes, I confirmed it with the producer. Greg just told me that Taylor Swift will be in Kansas City tonight, Casey Scheifold, to watch her boyfriend, not really, Travis Kelce.
Don't worry. Ross actually knows this. He's just bad with names. He knows his stuff.
Speaking of Kansas City, has there ever been a better offense that has so little fantasy value?
It's incredible. It's just like
you have Mahomes, Kelce, and then nobody else. I mean, tonight you're going to play Pacheco because it's Denver. He gives up 106.
Pacheco's probably the only one you can play.
Pacheco. I mean, I think you're right, Casey, about Rice maybe being the number one receiver tonight, or maybe Watson. I'm not quite sure who's the number one receiver.
But that's the
this
problem.
Highlights the problem right there.
Name another year where there's been a top 5 quarterback for fantasy purposes, and you couldn't tell me who the number one receiver was on that team.
No, it's true. And the Chiefs always had Tyreek Hill and Kelce for the most part until last year.
Right.
Last year was just like this. I mean, it was just a complete mess. It is crazy for it to be that functional. Also, is this not the Chiefs' second Thursday night game of the year? Am I wrong about that?
I don't know. They had a Sunday
night game. They're on Sunday. They're on Monday. They're on Thursday.
No, right. Well, I know that, but I thought they started against the Lions in week 1.
I think you're only allowed one. I think you were only allowed one Thursday night game.
No, it's their second because opening night was them and the Lions.
Oh, that
the Lions upset.
I don't think I ever remember a team having 2 Thursday games, but
I mean, I don't either. They're supposed to spread it around. That's the rule in the NFL, but I guess not.
All right, so let's talk about. Last week we talked about some buy low candidates. Let's talk about people you want to sell high at this point, and they've had a big breaking out or whatever, and you just don't expect it to continue. Who would you recommend getting rid of? Whose numbers don't look real to you? I'm putting you on the spot.
Who would I look to get rid of?
I mean, if I was in a league and I was not in first place or second place, I would try to trade Justin Jefferson. Not because I don't think he's going to come back and be good, just because I'm panicking a little bit because I'm worried about making the playoffs. Playoffs. Because you know what? This is a short season. It's not like we think like, oh, I've till January. That's when the season does not end in January. Your season ends like right after Thanksgiving. Then you start playoffs. So you got to think like, I have a commodity here. I drafted him first. He's going to be out for at least 4 weeks. And I need another receiver that's going to get points, or I'm not going to be in the playoffs. So Justin Jefferson to me is somebody that's really high right now. And I would possibly trade for him if I'm winning my league. Like if I'm up 5 games, if I have a record of 5-0.
Yeah,
and I can lose a couple games here or there and to be ready for the playoffs with Jefferson, I would do that. And I do have some leagues where I am 5-0.
You mean you would trade for him?
I would trade for him, yeah.
Yeah, right. Because
so I think he's a good example of owners that are just like I don't know what I'm going to do, and I get it, and it's a bad spot to be in, but just make the best of it.
Well, let me ask you this: Is DJ Moore a sell high at this point?
I was just going to bring him up. I think he is.
Yeah, I agree.
it's a little counterintuitive, but I still don't trust.
Well, I mean, he had like 230 yards and 3 touchdowns in one game. Like, and you could argue that makes it somebody you definitely want to hold on to, but I just don't see the numbers staying that way. Then again, we were talking, well, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about, are the Bears the worst franchise in sports? And since then, Justin Fields has come alive and they've been winning.
That's what he did last year. He was terrible through 5 weeks.
Right.
Another guy who I would sell high on right now is Alvin Kamara.
I don't think he's even. How is he high?
Because he's been running back 7 and 9 his 2 weeks into the league, and his name still carries that value. I think you can get that, and I just don't see it continuing for him.
I can't stand that guy.
I know you don't like him, Ross, but he's still a sell high.
I don't know. He was a number 7 running back. I had no idea. What do you guys think? If you're a Chris McCaffrey owner, and just because of his history getting hurt, and he's like he's like the league MVP. Let's be serious. I mean, if I had to vote for an MVP, he'd be up there.
He's been a monster.
I mean, do you keep him and just hope he stays healthy, or do you trade him and try and get like 2 great players for him, which you can probably do?
Yeah.
In the Dan Ratner school of trading, he likes to trade 2 good players or one waiver wire player and 1 good player for
not always a waiver wire player. Yeah. Not always a waiver wire player. A lot of times I'm looking for that waiver wire spot because, I don't want to offer things that are horrible to people. You got to build good trade.
Casey, should we comment or should we just let him go get away with it?
We'll let him get away with it.
My God. That was like silent slander.
But what do you guys think about keeping McCaffrey or holding on to? I mean, keeping him or trading him? What do you guys think?
It depends on your team. It depends on your team balance, I think. If you need some depth, then there's added reason to do it. I think to Ross's point, you could be avoiding some risk. And it depends on how good the deal is also. I mean, if you can get, let's say you could deal Christian McCaffrey and you can get Tyreek Hill and I don't know, some solid running back.
See, that's what I mean. You can't even name one who's close.
Right. Well,
there is a buddy. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah,
I don't think you can get value for him. Somebody I'd sell high on also is Justin Fields. I know he sustained it last year, right? But do you trust him to be able to do it every year? That he's terrible for 5 weeks and then great?
I hear you, and I'm not saying it's a bad call. I understand, but at the same time, just to play devil's advocate. A lot of times you win the league with guys like this. They're just going bananas and they just continue to go to bananas. And I think I often think about which am I going to regret more? Am I going to regret more trading the guy and then he continues to go off and I have the chance at that? Or am I going to regret more passing up on selling him at the right time? It's hard to say. I think you stick with him at this point. He looks good to me. Ross, what about you?
I'm just like you guys said from the beginning. It just depends what the offer is. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. I on my team, I try to make it so anybody's tradable. Make me an offer.
It all depends on the offer, right?
Yeah, I mean,
everybody should be for sale.
I'm always looking to increase and make my team better throughout the season. So I think it's healthy to make trades, even though people just like to stick with their team, and I get it. But I think it's a good way to increase your chances of winning if you trade.
Oh, I think you often need to make some trades, especially in my situation. I now need to make some trades. Party Marty says Dolphins win the Super Bowl. My Ottawa Senators win the Stanley Cup. He clearly thinks he's going to win the Hockey League as well. This year, go Sens, go Dolphins.
I like the Dolphins pick, the Ottawa Senators. I don't agree with that at all. I am
in agreement with Ross here.
I think it's going to be another American team winning the Stanley Cup like it has been in the past 40 years. But keep going.
Now we're just going to keep getting further and further afield. We moved to hockey. Now we're to European football. Different football, but super surprised Turkey beat Croatia in the Euro qualifiers.
It's awesome. I watched most of it, so it was fun to watch.
Ross, do you know about this happening?
I did not know that, and we're talking about soccer, obviously.
Yep.
And no, I do follow the World Cup. I like watching that, but
love the World Cup,
and I do watch a little Premier League. Case, just so you know, I like Arsenal. That's my team. But when it comes to these friendlies and these Euro qualifier stuff,
I have my Arsenal shirt on.
I like the Arsenal. I didn't even see it until I said it. But I do like Cincinnati in the MSL. I do love that team. So I do follow soccer a little bit, but I'm not a huge fan like you and Atwater. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm a soccer guy. So
that's a great. Zach Moss is a great question. This is somebody.
What do you do?
What do you do with Zach Moss, guys? You got Tyler coming back. What do you do?
Soccer. I mean, I think you hold on to it because I don't think you can get value for him, and you don't know.
Really, no value on Zach Moss, who's been like.
Well, how much would you pay for him knowing Jonathan Taylor's back?
Listen, you and I and Dr. Dan Ratner know what we're doing. Some idiots in your league don't. So, and they look at the stats and they say, "Oh my God, this guy's money every week." So I need to get this guy. So I'm asking you, if you have Zach Moss, would you trade him? Yes or no?
Yeah. Well, you also could go to the Jonathan Taylor guy, the guy who has him, and say, look what a beast he was. You can definitely get value for him with some managers, but you're both right, because Casey's also making the point. There's going to be some managers who won't give you any value for him, so you just hold on to him. If the trade is good, make it. If it's not, I think he's a hold. I would be trying to sell high, though, Chris.
Me too. I would try to get rid of him, too. I think Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the league, hands down.
Yeah,
okay.
Healthy, yeah.
Albert Merriquin says the Bears' next 3 games are against the Vikings without Justin Jefferson, Raiders, and Chargers. So
all 3 bad defenses. So huge games coming up.
Again, I'm not saying sell today, but let him have 2 or 3 more good weeks and then sell him for even more.
Yeah, and it really depends on the value. You can get some crazy value depending.
And I guess it depends who my backup quarterback is. Obviously, if I have Daniel Jones or Mac Jones, any Jones for that matter, I'm not going to.
Mrs. Jones. Sorry.
I love when Ross breaks out in song.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
First, it was going back to Cali reference, and now this.
Yep.
Let's talk about
Mr. Jones and me.
Let's talk about Kyren Williams. What do you expect from him for the rest of the year?
If he can stay upright, I mean, that offense is clicking right now. I just don't. Speaking personally, I don't have the numbers to back it up, but I don't think he's going to be able to stay healthy at the rate he's carrying the ball right now.
I understand that, in terms of his size and stuff. But here's what I don't understand. I watched Kyren Williams in college, and
Florida State or Florida?
It was Notre Dame.
Notre Dame was Kyren Williams, right?
So that's a good thing I knew it because I said I was watching him, which I was. But I was studying in dynasty leagues, like who's going to be good. I don't understand why teams miss out on guys like this. I watched him. I was like, this guy's going to be good. I'm wrong all the time, but that time I happened to be right. Why did the teams all miss out on a guy like this? Or is it just a system thing?
It's the measurables. The measurables. He didn't test well in the 40-yard dash. He didn't have the greatest shuttle times.
But this shows maybe shouldn't only be thinking about that.
Well, yeah, but we see that all the time.
Where did he go in the draft? Do we remember?
In case you look it up. But meanwhile, the Rams are just throwing the ball so well, and they're not thinking about
the Rams look so much better now, don't they?
And Stafford and Cooper and Puka and Tutu. I mean,
5th round, 164th overall.
Yeah.
That's a great place to get a running back like that. But the Rams just look like a whole different team this year.
I really like the Rams. I like their coach. I know they don't have the best talent in the NFL, but you know what? They come to every game and they're always in a position to win. Always.
And we all wondered whether Puka and Cooper could exist. And that first half, watching them both haul in like 8 passes.
You mean exist together? We knew that they could
coexist.
Yes.
Coexist on the football field.
I was just making sure. No, I mean, Puka was probably a guy who a lot of people sold high on, but the question is, was that a good thing to do? Would you still consider selling high on him?
No.
I'm just keeping him.
I would keep him unless some idiot offers me
I would keep him because I think that
some stupid deal.
Right. I think his value is still going to be good, but his value is depressed right now because Cooper Kupp came back.
Yeah.
What about David Montgomery? Let's look at the Lions running back situation. What do you make of this with David Montgomery obviously having a great start to the season? What's going to happen with their young running back? The Lions.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
He's hurt. I don't know when he's coming back. I haven't heard anything about this week.
He still looks iffy for this week.
They have this other Reynolds guy, Craig Reynolds is the other running back they have. but I like Montgomery. Montgomery's their ball guy. I mean, before Gibbs got hurt, he was getting the ball like 80% of the time.
Williams.
I mean, he's just a beast, and he gets touchdowns and he catches the ball. I mean, the Lions are going to win the North. I mean, they're the best team in that division, I feel. They go down to Tampa Bay this weekend, which is going to be a tough game for them, going against Mayfield. Don't get me wrong. But I love Campbell, their coach. I love their team. Even without St. Brown, I think they're a good team.
So if I'm a Jahmyr Gibbs owner, should I pick up Craig Reynolds?
Hopefully not. Hopefully you don't have to do that. I mean, if you're really desperate, yes.
I am desperate.
If you're really desperate, and he'll probably get, if Gibbs doesn't play, he'll probably get like 8 rushes, but not in the red zone.
The problem is I don't have anybody I can cut. You know, Ross, this is why I like 2-for-1 deals. I don't have anybody I can cut.
There you go.
All right, Chris Atwater says, how do you guys feel about Deshaun Watson? The most loaded question you can ask a Cleveland Browns fan or former Cleveland.
Dan, don't go off on a tangent on this. It could be a trigger for Dan, just so you guys know.
Oh yes. If I just stop responding and I'm just vibrating,
and he's shaking and biting his lip,
you know what's happening.
Deshaun Watson, he's not worth the $240 million that they gave him. Not even close.
That was known right when it happened.
It's a joke. I don't think he's a top 10 receiver in fantasy or in reality.
Quarterback.
He's not a top 10 receiver either, though.
That's a fact.
I mean, okay, well, he's not a top 10 quarterback, or he's not a top 10 receiver either. And I just feel that if you have him as your quarterback starting in fantasy, you're going to lose. So that's the truth. There you go.
All right. Is Keenan Allen a sell high?
Oh,
now Keenan, you're talking about the guy from Saturday Night Live, Keenan.
Keenan. What is his name? I'll look that up for you.
Okay.
I almost said Keenan Allen,
Keenan Allen.
fans, and I know it's not him. Keenan Allen, the veteran
receiver who's having a big year.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Mike Williams is out. So
he's out for the year.
I believe he's going to keep it up. I think the question is injury risk, but I don't see him declining. Doesn't look that way to
he's
me.
the number one receiver, and the rest of the guys are just out there to run routes.
I mean, with Mike Williams hurt, his volume only goes up. The issue is, do you think he's going to get hurt at some point?
Right. That's what I was asking. Yep. And then should you be investing in Quentin Johnson behind them? And is he even really ready to play? Would he be the guy to step up? Well, let's say Keenan Allen goes down. What Chargers wide receiver do you want to have?
Quentin Johnston.
I agree with Casey. I like Quentin a lot. He's big
body. In the offense for 7 or 8 weeks.
That's the other thing
that's when you tend to see rookies take off.
This is the point in the season when the rookies tend to take off.
I agree with Case. I think physically he's a beast. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever seen him, but he's just a monster. But if Keenan Allen goes down, the Chargers go down. Their season's over. And I think Eckler's playing this week. That's what I've been reading. 95% sure that Eckler's going to be there Monday night against the Cowboys, which I think the Cowboys are going to get beat again on national television. How about that, Casey Scheinfeld? Take that.
All right, I don't mind that.
Now, we didn't really answer Chris's question, though, about Deshaun Watson. What do you...
Okay, I answered the best I could. Casey, would you have him on your team as a starter if you had a fantasy team, yes or no?
Deshaun Watson?
As a starter? No.
I dropped him.
Okay, the answer is one question. Dan, would you have Deshaun Watson on your team if you had a fantasy team?
In Superflex, I would be okay with it, even though I don't love
the so top 20 quarterback, you're saying, or top 24?
Top 24.
I think he's top 24, but I think he's back end. I do think he's back
there you
end.
Go. That answers the question. No, we don't believe in the question.
Meanwhile, Chris Atwater suddenly had an outbreak of enthusiasm about Matthew Stafford, and I just wanted to announce it. Okay, now he's saying
Stafford this year.
I believe in Gibbs long-term, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think the Lions look fantastic. That's very clear.
Okay.
You have 49ers, Eagles, and NFC Championship, Casey, but I'm picking Lions versus one of those teams.
And I don't disagree with you.
It's a great underdog pick.
That the Lions right now are the third best team in the NFC, but they haven't been there before, right? And the 49ers and Eagles have won consistently. And I just think when it comes to the playoffs, am I going to trust
playoffs?
Am I going to trust Jared Goff in the playoffs?
Especially
on the road.
Especially if they're on the road
Super Bowl.
in San Francisco.
No, he's lost. That's right.
No, he hasn't. He lost a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he lost, right.
Am I going to trust him on the road in Philadelphia or San Francisco? Or am I going to trust Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts, who both
Brock Montana or
Jalen Hurts? It's just, I agree with you. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, you'll see the Lions take that next step, but I don't think this is the year yet.
I root for the Lions. Thanksgiving, they're my favorite team. I watch them every Thanksgiving.
I think they're gonna play a great game against either the 49ers or the Eagles before that, but they're not. I don't think they're gonna make it to the NFC Championship. Right. Okay, let's return to Derrick Henry. We've been debating him.
Man, I was 1 week off on my prediction.
I was gonna say he looked terrible last week. So now what do we think?
Tajay Spears.
Yeah. Well, Ross, what do you think about it?
Well, the Tennessee Titans are in London this week. They're playing the London game.
Oh, the London game.
Which I can't stand. I hate those international. I despise them. I still like Henry. I don't think his career's over yet. I think
I'm still on the Henry train.
I'm still on the train. If I had him, I would start him. Obviously,
I would.
I'm not sold on Spears yet. Britney Spears I do like, but that's it.
Yep.
But
don't trade for her.
I do think Henry's going to start getting the ball more because Tannehill sucks. Horrible.
He's at like a 55-45 timeshare with Spears already.
I don't care. They'll go
is that in terms of snaps or in terms of actually touches?
Touches? I don't know. I'll have to look which one.
But I'm still on the Henry train. I'll stay on the train until
that's one I'm just going to ride until it falls.
Until the rails fall.
I'm not getting to that.
I want to respond to Christopher Atwater's comeback there.
All right, let's see.
Okay, good. Do it, Case.
Experience matters. Been there. Just what the Dodgers thought, Casey. All right, let's hear you. Let's hear it, Casey.
Other than COVID, the year they won the World Series, which was an awful year for baseball, they have been the last 10 years one of the worst playoff teams in baseball. Their record is beyond losing. So yes, they get to the playoffs. And they suck in the playoffs. So when I say experience matters, we're talking about two teams that win in the playoffs, two teams that make it to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl in the playoffs.
And the
Dodgers
we see it all the time. We see it all the time in all the sport. Look what happened to the Orioles. The Orioles they're not experienced. In fact,
they need a starter. They need a.
They do. They're just a little bit short. But I looked up at the screen, saw the Orioles playing baseball in October, and thought, why are they playing a replay? I actually didn't think it was the playoffs, but it was. Now, let's talk about Joe Burrow. We've been talking about, is he going to return to form?
Joe Burrow, yep.
I've been betting on him all year.
Joey Silk.
So in one league, somebody offered me Justin Herbert switching for Burrow, and I got a higher draft pick, and I snatched it up. It looks great now. I mean, they're at least
but those
fairly even, and that's a keeper league,
right?
That's a keeper league, by the way. Yeah, very comparable. But if you could get something for him,
if you could get a Justin Herbert type who's equally as young, equally as fantasy friendly of a quarterback, and get a better draft pick, sure. But
would you trade Hurts for Burrow?
I would not.
No,
I wouldn't either.
No, I don't see the reason to do that.
Just because Hurts runs the ball, he scores touchdowns.
And Hurts isn't a runner in the sense of like Michael Vick or RG3, these who would run recklessly. If you watch this guy, he gets his touchdowns on the brotherly shove, as they like to call it.
I like that brotherly shove. We should do that together.
And the rest of the time, he's really smart about getting out of bounds or getting down. He doesn't take big contact.
No.
So I don't think he's going to run into the same risk of Anthony Richardson, who already sprained his AC joint, or RG3 whose knee, or Michael Vick who was always hurt, like those guys.
He has major weapons too on that team. I mean, he has two great receivers and a good tight end and a running back. I can't say his name because it's a trigger for who, but
somebody just tried to trade me in our dynasty league. Somebody tried to trade me DeAndre Swift today.
Oh, you said it. Oh no.
They wanted me to give them Romeo
we already
Dobbs.
Talked about Deshaun Watson.
They wanted me to give him Romeo Dobbs and a first-round pick in Dynasty for DeAndre Swift.
What? No, that's not happening.
That's just terrible.
Also,
still too much.
I'm just not really trading for DeAndre Swift in Dynasty. What about George Pickens? What are we thinking about George Pickens? I mean, has he arrived?
I think he's a top 5 running. I know his stats don't show it, but I feel he's a great receiver.
Talent-wise?
And if he didn't have Pickett as his running back, as his quarterback, I feel that he would be if he was on like any other team that has a guy that can get him the ball. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm a
I
huge
love
fan
watching
of him
this
in
guy.
dynasty or keeper leagues. Redraft leagues, I don't trust Kenny Pickett.
I don't either. I wish I could. I agree with you, Case.
in redraft leagues, I think you can get Pickens for a value because of that. I'm not saying he's going to be the greatest because Pickett is going to hold his value down some, but he seems to be really emerging.
You got to wait 2 years. It gets out of the rookie contract, and then he can go to a different team where they'll really get the ball a lot more. Can you imagine him in Kansas City, Casey? Can you imagine the stats that guy would get?
Oh, I know. It'd be crazy.
It'd be like Tyreek Hill stuff.
Guess what? I have him in Dynasty, so I am.
You do?
That. I do.
I'll be making an offer soon.
Here's a question for you since we're talking trades. I have Justin Jefferson in Dynasty. If I can get a boatload of a haul for him right now, should you trade him?
It depends if you're in position to win.
I am. Yeah. I think I'm 8-1 or 8 I'm 8-2, whatever it is.
Yeah. By the way, for people who are wondering about these numbers, we play against the league median, so you get 2 games each week. It sounds insane.
I didn't know till like the league started that was happening.
Right.
Just
I'm like, what happened?
I was an idiot.
After 3 weeks.
Casey, I would if you're doing that well in our league, I didn't check the league standings, but
I'm 8-2.
I would consider that. I don't think it's a bad.
It depends on how big of a haul, because you can get people to really overpay. You got to hammer people on that deal if you're gonna.
Well, there's a guy in our league who literally has 4 first-round picks this year.
Oh my God!
Who is this?
Dougie. He has yours, Ben's,
Ian's rebuilding. Yep.
Ben's, Kyle's, and Chris Atwater's.
Who is he? Who's the team that had all those number 1 picks? Was it Dallas or who? Who had all those number 1 picks that one?
Are you talking about the Herschel Walker trade?
Yeah,
maybe, I think so. But this one team had like all these number 1 picks.
It was the Vikings. The Vikings.
You're probably right.
I
don't know that many number 1 picks.
Vikings traded the picks, as I remember.
Casey, I would definitely consider that, and I would definitely think about it. Yes.
All right. How about we talk about rookie tight ends? Sam Laporta, definitely surprising all of us.
Injured.
So what's the injury situation?
Didn't practice today. Calf injury.
Ooh, calf injuries. Look what happened to Burrow all those weeks.
I've had calf injuries. They're horrible. It's not a good injury.
Would you sell him high to anybody who would take him for the right price? Obviously, it depends on
a redraft league. Absolutely.
I mean, Case, he's the number 2 receiver, right? Behind
number
Kelsey,
3 tight end right now, I think.
Who's number 2?
I
thought he was number 2. It's not Andrews.
Who are you saying is number 1? Kittle?
Oh, no. Kittle and
Hawkinson and Kittle are 1 and 2, I think.
Okay, Kelsey's not in there.
Well, he's been.
I don't think Kelsey's going to play much tonight either. I think Kelsey will hit the field for a few catches, and
I'm not even sure he's going to play, honestly.
They say he's playing. His girlfriend's there.
Oh, okay. How about Tank Dell? Rest of year.
Let's talk about Case. Case has a good opinion about him. Casey,
I love Tank Dell. It's just the concussion I worry about because he's, you don't know how fast he's coming back, but he's got great chemistry with Stroud, and Stroud is an ascending quarterback right now. So you want that connection. They're not a great defense. So they're not in a lot of games. So the game script is good for both him and Nico Collins. So I would probably try to acquire him if I knew he was going to be healthy.
Guys, let's talk about CJ Stroud real quick. I mean, where do you put him in fantasy? Would you trade for him? Do you think he'll not throw an interception this year? I mean, where do you guys have him?
He's going to throw an interception. But
I can be optimistic.
If I'm in a keeper or dynasty league, I'm going after Stroud, I think.
Okay.
Because he got, what was it? The Wonderlic score, was what made everybody start to doubt him in the preseason because he didn't score as high on that.
Oh, yeah. That's the test that Dan Ratner gave him.
Watch Ohio State's game against Georgia
I watched that.
Year. Georgia won the game, but Stroud was far and away the best player on the field. And he dominated a defense that put 9 players into the NFL over a 2-year stretch.
Yeah, I always think it's kind of a mystery how teams evaluate who's this best quarterback. And we know teams are whiffing on quarterbacks all the time. There was no reason that CJ Stroud was necessarily below Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, and I think
now,
teams have to look
2 overall, didn't he?
Did he
Richardson
go?
went 3.
That's right.
Young.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Stroud,
You know what? I got confused because in dynasty leagues, Richardson went before both of them.
Because all the hype, because this guy's a mom,
and the running,
it was all BS.
And the running.
Yeah. I remember that very well. But
yeah,
CJ Stroud to me, it's like, yeah, this is a guy that can win you your fantasy.
Would you rather
league.
have CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence? Because
CJ
Trevor
Stroud.
Lawrence is somebody everybody said preseason.
CJ Stroud.
I would rather have Stroud at this point.
Yeah,
Stroud.
That's
Stroud.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Give me the rookie. I like his receivers too. Look at his receivers.
Yep.
Nico Collins. I love that guy.
But you look at Trevor Lawrence has Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. Like he's got a full stable too.
Talk Houston. They have Robert Woods. They have this Nico Collins. They're not shabby there.
All right. Chris Atwater says, I like the idea of moving Jefferson because his QB is about to change and it won't look fantastic. Do you guys agree with that statement?
I think without Cousins in Minnesota,
I think the best receivers still produce regardless of quarterback.
I think it will decrease, but you know, here's another question. What do we expect from Jordan Addison for the rest of the season?
Well, I think Hawkinson values gains the most value from this. I think all of a sudden he's going to get 35% of the volume of passes.
That's good.
I think Addison obviously gets a big bump, gets 7, 8, up to 10 targets a game. And then KJ Osborne. The problem's going to be Addison benefited a lot from them shading their safeties and their secondary all towards Jefferson. And that's not there anymore. Addison's a great receiver, but he's not the biggest guy. And so
he also wasn't getting a huge amount of targets. Like I don't trust that.
He was super efficient, but
right.
But he's also, I don't know how well he'll do against what the physicality the number one wide receivers have to go up against.
It's kind of hilarious how in fantasy football, sometimes you don't like efficiency because it means the numbers aren't coming your way as much. Chris Atwater says Stroud to me is sell high, super high. Okay, Case, what do you think about that? I know, Ross, you and I think he's better than Trevor Lawrence at this point in fantasy.
Oh, I do. I love CJ Stroud. I feel he's going to be like rookie of the year right now if I had to vote.
The only reason I would say you could sell super high on him because you didn't draft him to be your QB1. So if you drafted him behind a Josh Allen, behind a Jalen Hurts, behind a Joe Burrow or Herbert, yes, sell him for a top running back or a top wide receiver.
Yeah, and a lot of this is about the strategy of the bye weeks. You got to get through your bye weeks pretty well. Once you're through, start strengthening your lineup for the playoffs if you're in position. So let's say you're in a pretty good position already. Maybe you can take that hit even with the bye weeks.
Yeah.
Especially with quarterbacks, you're just filling in 1 week. So,
but if you could trade CJ Stroud and you have, like you said, like a top tier quarterback playing that you're going to start every week anyway.
Yep.
Might as well go get that number 2 receiver or that number 2 running back.
I agree with that.
Do it.
I like Stroud a lot, especially in Super.
You're not playing him. He's not going to start. If you have a top tier guy, let's say you have Mahomes and you have Stroud, you're going to start Mahomes every week. You're not an idiot.
Yeah, and you can swap out Stroud for a much lesser quarterback as your backup, and that's fine.
You can have Stafford or something as your backup. Doesn't matter.
Let's just talk briefly. We're going to wrap up soon, but I want to talk about some guys that you think are buy low candidates. Like, can you get Austin Eckler cheap at this point? Is that something you want to do?
I don't know if you can get him cheap at this point. You probably could have gotten him cheap 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, if you've been holding him for 5 weeks,
you're pissed. You're mad.
You're holding on to him for next week at this point.
All right, so let's have you each name a couple names. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Breece Hall.
Breece Hall. He's a buy low.
Right now, his stats are not a buy high right now, but Devin Cook is not going to get the ball that much.
Yeah.
And I feel Breece
we call
Hall,
him Delvin. I'm just going to say it.
Delvin Cook. I like Hall a lot, and he showed a lot of unbelievable skill. So he has the green light to be there every down. So I love Hall, and get him if you can.
Here's another guy I'm definitely buying low on. We've talked about this a lot, but Jalen Waddle, I think I'm still trying
Casey, do the Waddle for me,
up.
please.
Every chance
there
I get.
You go.
I mean,
can't do that.
I'm not even going to try. But even though that's the area I dance in, above the nipples. But Jalen Waddle is a guy who I'm buying low on every time in this.
Anybody in Miami, I that team offensively.
I want a piece.
So
of
much
that.
fun.
CeeDee Lamb hasn't put up great numbers. I think you can get him. You can't get him.
Yeah, but I'm worried about him putting up numbers anyway.
Well,
yeah, I agree with Casey.
This is part of the reason you can get him, though.
I mean, I know you guys made fun of me. I know you guys. Well, you didn't.
We do make fun of
Ross,
you every 20 minutes.
When I was talking about how good having Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator in San Diego was going to do for Los Angeles, for Justin Herbert. And look what it's done. But look what the loss of him in Dallas has meant for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard.
All right. Well, how about Devontae Smith? You can probably get him for similar.
Yeah, you can probably get Smith a little inexpensive.
How about Tony Pollard? Like Casey just mentioned his name. I mean, he was a first round pick in a lot of leagues, and his stats aren't that great. I mean, do you think he'll start hitting in all cylinders in November? Let's say November when it really counts.
I mean, at least he didn't pull a Steve Slayton and fumble the ball and disappear.
I think what we're looking at. I mean, what we're learning is how important offensive systems are just to be in place for these teams. Like, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson is a very good running back, right? Like he's got speed, he's got power, he's got vision, he's got patience. If you talk to any scout, they say he's got the full package. He's like the 34th ranked running back in fantasy because the Patriots offensive system is atrocious.
Right.
Like I think Tony Pollard is capable of certainly being a breakout player for the second half of the season. But right now that offensive system is broken. Like they put up 40 points against the Giants in week 1, but it was 2 defensive touchdowns.
Okay, over under on Belichick getting fired before Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving.
They're going to let him finish out the year.
There's no way they'll fire him midseason. He'll never.
Okay, fine.
He has earned a lot more cred than that.
Yeah, Kraft has no patience to see. He has no patience.
But this is a rare case where he just has to. I'm going to give you one more buy low.
Okay, tell me. I'll fight you on this one. Who is it?
I like Christian Watson coming out of the bye. His numbers are way low. He's been injured a lot. There's a lot of people. So look, if you're looking for a home run hitter, I think you can get him for very cheap. That would be my call. Russ?
I like it. I mean, he goes deep. He gets the ball. He catches like 30-yard catches like every game. I mean, he catches the ball, and he did it last week. I watched him against the Raiders. I love Christian Watson. I agree with you. I think he's always has big games, and its problem is love. Love is not consistent. And that Green Bay team, when they lost to the Raiders last week, that wasn't a good loss. That was horrible.
It's true, but
I'm worried about Green Bay. If I was a fan of them, I don't know what's going to happen.
But if you can pick up Christian Watson as your wide receiver 3, he's boomer.
I love it.
Play.
I love it. I love that. I love that one.
All right, Chris Atwater says Patriots stink, bro. Offensive line is a joke. It's a rough year to be a Patriots fan, but you're riding on 2 decades of success. So
yeah, I mean,
you're all right.
Super Bowl rings. You're okay. You got rings.
You're doing all right.
You got pennant. You got everything. But again, you should be a Boston Bruin fan. There's other sports you can be New England fans. You don't have to be a Patriot fan. But there you go.
But Chris is mostly a Saints fan anyway. So
I don't know why is he from Boston? Why is he like New England? I can't stand that team.
He is from the New England area. Yes.
Okay, so that's where he likes him. Okay,
but he's a Saints fan. All right. Anybody else we should mention? Players that are just popping to your mind before we wrap up here that need to be mentioned.
Jahan Dotson, I think, is a buy.
I was going to say that. Okay.
Buy low. Okay.
How about T. Higgins?
Buy low.
Buy low. Absolutely.
I mean, now, especially if the Bengals have another good offensive week this week, you think they found their rhythm, then T. Higgins is golden.
Okay.
All right, guys, it has been a pleasure. Keep those questions coming. We're here every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Casey and Ross are here on Tuesdays. That is at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. They're answering waiver wire questions. And a lot of times that's exactly when you need to know. So tune into them on Tuesdays. Tune into us here for all your trade and strategy talk. It's been a pleasure. Casey, Ross, thanks for joining me here.
I'll see you in a couple hours. We got our NBA draft, which I'm excited about.
That's right. And Casey is about to pass out from.
I'm still trying to work out the logistics of getting there. I think
Casey has soccer. He has.
Casey, I might have somebody who wants to take your place. I'll check. I'm going to let you know in all right. Maybe
you let me know
a half an hour.
And his name is. What's his name? Greg Romano. Who's taking his place?
Name is Raniel Datner.
Yes, I'll just have 2 teams, and I'll trade with myself.
Jim Ganaccio. We're digging him up from the grave.
All of a sudden, Dan has a $400 budget for the draft.
It's amazing how good this one team is. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you next week. Keep up the good work and good luck.